It was the greatest rally ever, a rally to end all rallies. President Trump touting the United States as the hottest country in the world at last night's Great American State Fair rally. The fair kicks off nationwide celebrations now for America's 250th anniversary. And who could forget, of course, the UFC held Freedom 250 at the White House, all great events celebrating the birth of our nation. But don't tell the liberals, especially those in media, who even clapped back at me.
And by the way, if you thought this entire spectacle was inappropriate for something that takes place in the peripheral vision of Lincoln, well, that's a you problem.
Something that middle America, the average American, could connect with.
It's coming back to a sense of like, we don't need the snobby elites anymore pretending they're too good for us.
Yeah, you know, the average American, they don't want their White House to stand for certain morals and values. The regular people in this country want their president to live in a slightly more violent Hooters.
All right. I'm still okay that The Daily Show is watching us, so say what you want there. But this is something from comedian Tim Dillon that caught my attention because he's saying he believes the MAGA movement is in trouble. Listen.
The MAGA movement is starting to be pulled apart, and it's fraying, and there's only so many parties you can throw. There's only so many UFC events at White House lawn you can throw to keep these people entertained. There's only so many concerts in the park or whatever the hell they're going to try to do. Kid Rock can only fly, do a flyby in a stealth bomber so many times before people start to go, hey, what's going on here? Why don't I have any money?
Interesting take as we approach America 250. I'm pleased to bring in Michael Levine, a media expert, best-selling author, and Victoria Churchill. She is a U.S. political reporter for the Daily Mail. Victoria, I'll start with you. What do you think? Do you agree with Tim Dillon?
Well, I think one point that he's missing, and, you know, I actually went to the Ellipse on the day of the UFC fight, and something that I noticed is that actually the people that were there didn't really seem to be overtly political, which I think is important to note. Because, you know, unlike most events in D.C. that are somehow aligned with President Trump, we typically see lots of like MAGA hats and things like that. But, you know, I was pretty pleased to see that there was a diverse crowd. It was, you know, men and women of all different ages that were there. And there wasn't actually too much political merch. There was, you know, mainly from what I saw, there were just people that were fans of the sport that were there. And so I think that just goes to show the White House is reaching beyond the typical political demographic to bring them in with these events.
Yeah. And maybe it also goes to what I think, like the clip with the Daily Show, and like I said, I think it's great. You know, Jon Stewart can watch us every single day, right, Michael? Any publicity is good publicity, but it is the narrative around these events that might actually be the one that's anti-MAGA, not so much the people who are showing up. Because the Great American Fair last night, it was flyovers, it's beautiful, there's kids. It seems to be we're approaching a moment here for the celebrations, and there are people intent with their platforms to make it divisive and ugly. Mike, what say you?
I simply cannot understand how we've arrived at a place in American life where the media treats patriotism like a vampire treats sunlight. I don't get it. I don't understand it, except that it's massively ideological, and also it has some rootage in that very famous medical diagnosis, Trump derangement syndrome. If Trump is in favor of it, they despise it. And it is so visceral and palpable that it's painful to watch, actually.
You know, I mentioned you're a political reporter over at the Daily Mail, Victoria, so let's talk about this. Maybe picking up on what Michael just said, you know, people who are winning in Tuesday's primaries backed by Mayor Mamdani, it's not about America, it's about socialism. It is about people, even younger residents in college-educated, higher-income areas are supporting these radical people who are socialists and communists. So I want to play a little bit of, we have Democrats on all the time. Democrat strategist, former state senator in New York, David Carlucci. This is what he said when I asked him about why these folks are winning among those, you know, educated voters here.
Yes, the excitement is on the far left. There's no question about it. Moderation is not sexy. It usually doesn't drive people to the polls.
Moderation is not sexy. Okay, so moderate Democrats, they're going to be, maybe they'll all turn Republican. Maybe that's exactly what the media won't want, because moderation isn't sexy. That means socialism is, Victoria? What am I missing here as someone who loves this country?
Well, I've actually been on the campaign trail. It's my first day back in D.C. in about a week. And I talked to Democrats both in South Carolina and in New York. And, in South Carolina, people did seem to be more moderately aligned. But in New York, for a lot of people, the thing that was driving them out to the polls, and I talked to voters in the 12th Congressional District, which is the one, of course, that Jerry Nadler is vacating. That was actually, interestingly, a district in which Mamdani did not endorse a candidate. And so, you got somebody that was a little bit more establishment aligned, but in other places across the city, people really seem to be driven by their hatred of President Trump, versus, for example, in South Carolina, when I was talking to voters, they actually want to talk about pocketbook issues, about things like education. But in New York, it was all about that Trump derangement syndrome.
Okay, well, I have just a few more seconds left. And Michael, you're going to get the final word here. It's going to be 250. It's going to be big. There's going to be flyovers. Maybe Kid Rock will do something spectacular. Tim Dillon said you can't have enough of this. But maybe we can. Maybe this is exactly what we need to hammer it home to people. Get together, love each other, reach across the aisle. I don't know. Am I too optimistic, Michael?
Well, no, I think there's a large portion of this country that resonates to your message. And then there's another large portion of this country that has been captured by a mind virus that is so rooted in anger. And by the way, if you go to Starbucks and your coffee is $7, I can understand that being frustrating to you. You don't need to buy the coffee, but why you would enter into a suicidal pact with your society to do further damage to it is just counter sanity.
But I will say, the other thing, too, is that people can afford those $7 coffees. They're the ones out there doing the protesting and chanting in a lot of these blue cities. So it's really ironic that they are affording a lot of the things from capitalism. So, all right, Michael, Victoria, we're out of time. You guys are awesome. Hey, we're just all about the truth here on this program. I appreciate you both. And we thank all of you at home, no matter where you are, for tuning into Bianca Across the Nation. American Agenda up next. You don't want to miss it. Mike Johnson, President Trump, have an much anticipated